Imagine this. You have an idea that is really interesting. 1930s crime movie that is set in like Chicago, New York, around there. All right. But here's the twist. It focuses on the bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein himself. And add on top of that, two acclaimed actors. One that is in prime to possibly win an Oscar, Best Actress, and the other is acclaimed actor himself that people really enjoy watching. And on top of that, an actress wanting to tackle directing. There's something here. It's almost a guaranteed hit, or at the very least, something that I think a lot of people can be intrigued by. But the question now is, can that actually work? Doesn't, well, that be a bit of a problem.
The bride of Frankenstein.
No, just the bride.
Scared.
The Bride is directed and written by Maggie Gyllenhaal. The film stars Jessie, Buckley, Christian Bale, Peter Sarsgaard, Annette, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Penelope Cruz. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, in 1930 Chicago, Frankenstein asks Dr. Euphorius to help create a companion. They give life to a murdered woman as the bride, sparking romance, police interest, and radical social change. Maggie Gyllenhaal is an actress that hasn't done a lot since the 2010s. I can't even think of a movie past that I would even think she was in. While having a role on HBO's series Seduce, which ran, I believe, from 2017 to 2019, only lasted 3 seasons, she's been absent from the big screen for quite some time. The last movie that I can kind of think of that she was in was White House Down. Otherwise, prior to that, probably The Dark Knight. She hasn't really been in the zeitgeist even past that period of film. Her brother, on the other hand, Jake Gyllenhaal, I mean, he's been killing it. Not only did he go with the big blockbusters with the MCU in Far From Home, you also have him also trying to do a remake of an 80s cult classic with Doug Liman for Roadhouse. The man continues to find work. I mean, the guy did Nightcrawler. There's tons of work that this guy has done that no matter what project it is, you can't help but feel like you are excited to just watch Jake Gyllenhaal just do his thing and really embody a character. Maggie Gyllenhaal, she attempts to put her own spin on the Bride of Frankenstein because, of course, this is a character that is pretty much a spin-off of the character of Frankenstein that Mary Shelley had created in the 1800s. This is a character with a lot of history that is tied to an iconic, or at least one of the most iconic monsters in fiction history, having a star-studded cast, an interesting concept, and having Reigns to have full control on this project. Everything is here for this to be a creative outing for Maggie Gyllenhaal, for her to really prove that she can not just be an actress, but also direct and write. So everything is here. You got all the pieces. You have everything laid out here. By this alone, how, at the very least, the trailer was sold, this should be everything to make a solid watch. Unfortunately, its ambitions falter on its own to be messy, and that is very disappointing for me to say because I was really looking forward to this. I was actually legit excited to see what Maggie Gyllenhaal can do with a concept like this and with a cast like this, and yet by the end, you just are left wondering how did this all fell apart by the end. I still think there is still aspects of this movie that are really incredible, or at least enjoyable to watch, but there are also aspects of this movie that really feels like I think she needs a little bit more outings to really showcase what she is all about. But before discussing my problems and my issues with this movie, here are the positives that I did find with it. The performances are eccentric. Jessie Buckley is outlandish and insane as the titular character. Buckley switches from being innocent one moment and being crazy the next. Jessie Buckley, like I said, she is in Oscar prime contender for this year with Hamnet that came out at the tail end of last year, so she is in the award season. And with this being another movie, as much as I got my problems with how this movie is, I still think her acting is still excellent. She just knows how to just switch in and tap into the different elements of what this character is, even if there is an issue with it and how it's all handled. I still think her acting really does give this vulnerability to a woman that feels like she was vulnerable and feeling like she was dealt the wrong hand, but at the same time, she is also really just wild and insane and just going all out there for the world to see. Buckley's just trying to work with what she's got. And I think for even though there is something to be had with how the writing is for this movie, I give her credit. She does give it her all, and I truly respect that. Christian Bale is well spoken and respectful as this version of Frankenstein. Conveying loneliness in violent moments, Bale feels raw in capturing Frankenstein's emotions. We have seen different versions of Frankenstein. I mean, hell, last year we just got one in the form of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, but this is a Frankenstein that is very much well spoken and at the very least respectful. And that's usually never been something you've seen a lot with Frankenstein, at the very least, what most people in cultural zeitgeist, or at least have seen movies, have kind of known about Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster. This is a different portrayal that I do think that Bale really hits and goes for it and commits to it. As much as, yeah, it is widely different than what we know for Frankenstein, I gotta give respect to Bale. I mean, he is a really talented, gifted actor that just sticks with the character through the end to being, at the very least, entertaining to watch. Both Buckley and Bale are charged up when together, carrying pretty much this entire film throughout. I think they have good chemistry with each other and have some moments where they try to find a groove, try to find an understanding, especially with their characters and how they're supposed to be. But I do think the actors just really have a good rapport and seem like they really developed a way of just matching each other's vibes as best as they can. And that's the best I can say with regards to how the film tries to have the actors perform. Now, I think that they elevate them much further than what they're given, but I'm just saying. I also really like Annette Bening and Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie, although they're just not given much. I do really like them in the film, especially Annette Bening. I thought that she was kind of quirky and interesting, and Jake Gyllenhaal is at least enjoyable, although don't expect much because, I mean, he's not in it to begin with. The direction is well done. Director Maggie Gyllenhaal shows off the vibrant and twisted nature of this concept, allowing the tone of this tale to be on display. If there's one thing I give her credit, is that Maggie Gyllenhaal just understands what she wants to go for, how this movie wants to really felt and captured. I give her mad respects for that. I think it is very ambitious for her to really tackle a concept like this, and I think in the way it is all handled, in terms of how it is all showcased and presented, I think she does well enough of what 1930s is like, but also just showing this twisted, sadistic nature that often you don't get much of in most movies that are set in this period. You kind of just get the glossy, kind of happy version. This one's just more twisted and sadistic, and I think she does well at capturing just that alone. I think the twisted nature of the underbelly of this period just fits right, and I think really fits how this movie could have been. The idea is there, and I think she executes what the tone should be and how it's supposed to feel. The cinematography is atmospheric. Cinematographer Lauren Shear shoots a stunning and gritty look to this 1930s gothic romance film, having this keen eye of the dark and glamorous style to it. I also forgot to mention the glamorous style because there are aspects where it tries to show the upper livings and the lavish nature of what 30s are, but still, the way that this movie goes about showcasing how they want this version of the 30s to be seen as is really beautiful. It's gorgeous. It can be very vibrant and very eerie at times. There's just this sort of feeling of capturing what like those old monster films tried to be and how they wanted to come off as, and that is really what this movie succeeds at, is in trying to really blend what 30s movies tries be, and it does it in a way where it fits. It fits well with what Maggie Gyllenhaal wants to also execute as well. The music is effective. Composer Hildur Gunnenter conducts a haunting but electric score that fits the vibe of the film, letting it have this eerie sound to add character. Of course, Gunnenter is a composer that is no stranger to atmospheric and very dark scores. I mean, she had recently done 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, as well as winning an Oscar for a movie that really got a lot of attention for her, and that was Joker. So there is something with how she is able to really convey the twisted sickness and emotion that stirs within people, but I think just in the bride herself and this raw energy that is on display and the outlandish and rage inducing feelings that you kind of expect for a movie like this, and she does that really well. The production is excellent. Seeing all the costumes, props, and sets on display was excellent. The amount of effort from the crew work showed the talent behind the scenes. Of course, when you're doing a movie that is a period piece or period fiction piece, there's always going to be a lot of effort in making sure that you at least get the right amount of how this movie wants to be. And yeah, this movie succeeds in that. I think they do a really good job of costumes and the props and the sets as well. I think they do spectaculously in wanting to really capture what it's like to be in the 30s and have the right amount of props that they need for this film. Well made. It is. It is a truly well made movie. However, it suffers from issues that felt messy and not fully realized. And that is the biggest problem that lies with this movie, is that it just falters on itself and stumbles to where you just are left feeling kind of sad and really disappointed by how this was all executed by the end, that you're just feeling like this could have been so much better than what we got instead. So here are now my negatives. The story is all over. While the concept was intriguing, because like I said at the beginning of this video, there are some good ideas here in the fact that, okay, if you want to have romance, fine, but you have this sort of Bonnie and Clyde crime aspect to it. I think that's what works about it. The execution on following the bride and Frankenstein's romance felt undecided. Does it want to be a gothic romance or a crime film? Or does it want to be a social commentary film? Because there is a commentary of women and how they are subjugated at the hands of men, and how men at power get away with things, and that women still are oppressed and feeling silent and not having a voice, especially in the 30s. These ideas, they're cool. The movie just doesn't know what it wants to be in all three of these. It's very much lost in both of them, to where it's just undecided. It's constantly going back and forth of, does it want to be this? Does it want to be that? Does it want to be this? And all these three ideas are fighting with each other. That really stops it from actually being what could have been. And instead, it just feels like an undecided film that just feels underwhelming and just feels like it had way too much to handle. The writing is bland. Maggie Gyllenhaal pens a script that feels generic and safe, leaving this being formulaic. The way in which characters act in this movie and the characterizations, or rather some of the dialogue, it just can be really obnoxious at times and can sometimes feel like it's really beating you over the head with certain things or certain storylines, and it just doesn't always work. It feels like you're watching a movie that's trying to be prestigious, or at the very least have this sort of feeling of wanting to have power, a message behind it. Yet you feel like this is very surface level, or it just doesn't really hit the same way as it should do. And to me, that's the biggest falter. And I think this is an area that I think Maggie Gyllenhaal needs to kind of, hopefully, if she gets another project, try to work and improve upon, because I do think that this is a movie that feels like it just trying to be too much. It's trying to be too edgy, and it's trying way too hard to really get what it's trying to sell you on. The detective subplot is pointless. Having Peter Sarsgaard and Penelope Cruz's storyline felt shoehorned in. You could honestly remove this from the film and it wouldn't change anything. Aside from like one scene, this storyline serves nothing but to just have this sort of realization for the bride to find out something about her past. But otherwise, this storyline doesn't add much. I guess the storyline could be that, well, Peter Sarsgaard, he supports his secretary that is played by Penelope Cruz, and he tags her along for this case. I guess there's a storyline about how there are some men out there that are willing to help women get a chance to move up in the world in which they want to pursue a career in something that is very impossible and is only made possible for men. But at the same time, again, the problem is that it just feels like it's shoehorned in here. It doesn't feel like there's a place for it. It feels like it takes away from what the movie has to or tries to be, and that's the biggest problem. It's very undecisive with itself, that by shoehorning in this subplot, it does nothing but just feel like filling to this movie. The pacing and runtime is drawn out, scenes will go on a bit longer, and has no flow to it. With a runtime of 2 hours and 6 minutes, it doesn't need to be dragged out over 2 hours. This is a film that I look at, and while I understand it tries to be epic, I don't think this needs to be over 2 hours. There's no point for it. I feel like this movie could have been cut down to maybe an hour 50 at best, but I don't see this movie being over 2 hours at the very least. This is a movie that has no reason to be that length. It could have easily been under 2 hours, or maybe even at, but over, even with credits, still, I just don't see a movie like this really being as lengthy as it should be. The editing is inconsistent. Cuts would feel at times quick and slow as well, never finding a middle ground to find its footing. And just like with its story, the editing in this movie can be very much choppy and messy at times. And sometimes it can find some sort of groove, but otherwise it's just kind of going fast and loose with things at certain points. And while I do think its pacing and runtime really showcases that, I just also think its editing doesn't help because it tries to really go past a lot of things very quickly, or it tries to slow things down to a point where it's having to explain stuff, or at least have these storylines be in here to have. It's just everything about this just ultimately feels like the editing here also feels undecisive, just like its story. While ambitious and daring, The Bride ultimately can't overcome its issues from being a solid watch. Though its performance and technical aspects are effective, the execution just feels underwhelming. Hopefully, Maggie Gyllenhaal's next movie can improve this film's problems. That's what I can give the best advice to her. I would say try to work on a bit of your writing and try to find a flow with things, because I just think that this movie just doesn't have that. It's very loud and brash, and I just don't think it hits what she wants it to hit, and that's the problem. I wish it could have, but ultimately you have a film here that just feels like it's all style and no substance. While she's got the style down, the substance itself, it's just not really what a lot of people were hoping it to be. It's very disappointing for a movie like this to be anticipated. It's a huge letdown, and one that I'm very sad to see just didn't really knock it out of the park. I'm gonna give The Bride a 5 out of 10. It's average, it's fine at best. If you want to watch it for its technical aspects or its performances, have at it. But otherwise, I think this is a movie that just suffers from having too much in a film that I think should have just stuck to one thing. And for a movie with this much ambition, it's just sad to see this just falter and just crumble under its own weight. And while its performances still make it at least watchable, I just ultimately do think that this is a movie that doesn't really execute what a lot of people were hoping. It's just disappointing because I just was hoping at the very least for a good watch, but instead I got something that was just kind of meh. So I will be soon reviewing Hoppers. So yes, look forward to that review and other reviews coming soon.